Welcome to the Fed to Fed podcast, where we dive into the dynamic world of government technology. I'm your host, Susan Scher, and in this series, we'll be joined by current and former federal leaders who are at the forefront of innovation in the public sector. Here, we speak openly and honestly about the challenges and opportunities facing the U.S. government in the modern age, championing innovation and the incredible capabilities of technology along the way. Whether you're a federal leader, a tech industry professional, or simply fascinated by IT modernization, just like us, this podcast is for you. And we're so happy to have you tuning in. Today, we have a truly exceptional guest with us, Mr. Michael Parrish, the Chief Acquisition Officer at the United States Department of Veterans Affairs. He serves as Senior Most Advisor to the Secretary, providing policy and oversight for all of the department's acquisition activities. He leads VA's 17,000 acquisition professionals and is responsible for the procurement budget of $40 billion, as well as the administration and oversight of approximately $100 billion in major programs. Additionally, Mike manages VA's $22 billion major construction and leasing program to support the largest integrated healthcare system in the United States, providing care at 1,255 healthcare facilities to over 9 million veterans enrolled in the VA healthcare program. Mike, welcome to the Fed to Fed podcast. We're thrilled to have you here today.
Thanks, Susan. It's great to see you again.
Why don't we go ahead and get started and chat about the great work you and your team are driving for FY24?
Sure. Yeah. For me, for the next new fiscal year that we just started today is, we're really focused on the people, processes, and technology. So I've been here for a little over 2.5 years, and it's been a journey in the acquisition maturity of VA. So looking at, my main focuses and the team's main focus across the enterprise is really from an acquisition standpoint around career management. So we want to improve our acquisition workforce career management processes and make sure that all of our teammates from, the lowest levels all the way up to my level have a path and have an opportunity. It's similar to the DOE Act of 1986, which brought me in as an acquisition officer back in the DoD days. But we're trying to incorporate something like that for VA, for all of our program managers and for all of our contracting officers and otherwise, to make sure that we have that standardized level of training and then also that upward mobility if people choose to go into management into other places. So, technically, process-wise, we're looking at institutionalizing the enterprise program management processes. Remember, that's part of PMEA, and it's part of, making sure that all program managers across all the administrations are following the methodologies and the concept. It's the life cycle management, as I've said in previous venues, that when I first got here, it was people thought acquisition equals just contracting, and really it's the concept of cradle to grave from the idea all the way through to disposition. And we've gotten much better at working through FTAR, working transparently and jointly across the enterprise, working with the CIO and the CFO and others to make sure that we're driving that behavioral and cultural modernization and transformation of acquisition processes. The other thing that we're really focused on this year rolling out is our introducing what we call the Enterprise Program Management Framework. Key component of that is what we call ALF, which is the Acquisition Lifecycle Framework. And it's really an automated system that gives us that extra rigor and milestone maturity and governance and oversight, as opposed to the old system we had, which was APMF, the Acquisition Program Management Framework, which is 10 plus years old. And then the third thing on the, from process going to technology, one of the things that we're really looking at is and it kind of ties into the later discussion, is really around the concept of IVV, independent validation and verification. It's really going in and making sure that our industry friends and our vendors have actually delivered what they promised on time and on budget. And it's a validation methodology, which we hope to roll out initially a limited pilot RFP folks around EHRM later here, hopefully this month, and then go to a bigger, more comprehensive effort. It's really starting with the larger programs, the major acquisitions. And so that's kind of the general topics, the big topics with the normal blocking and tackling. But we're in a good place, and we're continuing to improve our processes overall.
That sounds great, Mike. People, process, and technology is what it takes in terms of making sure that the culture, the people understand the direction you all are heading in. Are you going to be working with the VA Acquisition Academy to provide training to the acquisition workforce?
Correct. And actually, we're going to house that concept of the acquisition career workforce management in the VA Academy. So training is a very key component of that, along with that professional roadmap. But they're going to lead and they are leading in managing that effort as we're rolling that. We've been working on this for about a year plus now.
That's wonderful. That's very, very exciting. So, Mike, tell us more about the VA's multi-year appropriations and how that puts the Department of Veterans Affairs in a strong position to continue to deliver care to our nation's veterans.
First, let me give a shout out to our VA contracting teammates who we just finished FY23, and we had over 125,000 actions, which have a value. Initial preliminary numbers look at a value over $51 billion of contract efforts, and so we've greatly expanded, obviously, our purchasing and our purchasing power inside VA. And to put that in perspective, we just had the PACT Act, which was rolled out, which is really increasing our enrolled veterans. We originally had about 9.1 million. We've had additional veterans for about additional 3 to 5 million more in survivors. So, for the FY24 request, as you know, in our budget, we're requesting $325 billion, which includes discretionary collections and the mandatory spend. It's about a $16 billion increase over the FY23 enacted level, but it ties into the PACT Act actions. And, it provides for 7.4 million unique patients treated by the VA, 140 million outpatient visits. It's a historic investment in our infrastructure. We actually are calling this year, the FY24, the year of infrastructure, because as you know, our infrastructure is on average age about 60 years for our facilities, where on the civilian side, it's about 16 to 18 years. So we've got a lot of work to work on our facilities or our infrastructure debt. And we're looking at other ways other than just spending to be able to do that. So this year is a real focus on what we're doing with that. But right now in the budget, we have a $4.1 billion request for construction. And, education assistance is, serving nearly over 820,000 trainees through the education benefits. And so when you roll all that together, this is a little stronger or more robust budget, but we look at this as a long-term investment. And again, it's not just a yearly investment to your question, it's really multi-year investment. So a lot of the funds that we use are from previous years, and these funds also allow us to go forth to make sure that this critical national asset is continued to be of value.
That's terrific, Mike. How exciting to lead that effort. So, connected to that energy around the money, you established the Pathfinder program, you lead with innovation. You're driving towards using emerging technologies as you integrate people, process, and technology. Can
Yeah.
you talk more about how you're driving innovation within the acquisition community at the VA?
Sure. Yeah. One of the things that we're doing, and we're getting mature on this level also. First of all, as Pathfinders come out, we've had over 1,000 submissions. And you remember the original idea was the fusion of acquisition and innovation together. So where we've been really successful on the market research aspect of the sales side. And for those who have not seen Pathfinder, it's pathfinder.va.gov, and it's that easy to use, integrated, and intelligent system that helps, as a tutorial, go through a series of questions to help people who've never worked in government or people who've worked in government quite a bit to get linked up with appropriate buyers based upon those 10 categories OMB has said is in category management. So, on the innovation side, we're getting better at. I know we had a slow start, but for those people who are looking at innovative solutions, we have a rigorous process where it comes through on the innovation side, and then our research is evaluated initially for strategic fit to VA, and also the uniqueness or the novelty of it. And then we work on ways to help strategically source that product to be able to scale it to something that we in VA can use and possibly, change medicine across the world. And so it's the Pathfinders, that gateway or that door to get in. And then with innovation, especially what we're working on this next year, next generation is that strategic sourcing. Because as you know, a lot of DARPAs and research centers, our researchers love to publish, so they do the research for research sake and publish things. But when you look at it to fuse and merge that acquisition pieces, let's think strategically from the very beginning when we first get that new idea, and actually you have the contracting team in, have the lawyers in, and everybody at the beginning to be able to to work through and be able to quickly scale and source that thing. On DoD side, they have the cliche of the valley of death. That's where new ideas go to die, and it's really because things are done sequentially, and then when it becomes something that's real and viable, then there's no budget necessarily for it. So we're changing that paradigm, and through Pathfinder's a start to be able to do that going forward. And that's where we want to go with that. We're also doing a couple things around contractor responsibility assessment and market research assessments, where we're using intelligent systems, expert systems that can go in and gather data and be able to synthesize that and do some predictive analytics for us to be able to assess the current market conditions, the business sizes, and help be more efficient in our contracting processes. Back to your earlier question, what I'm really focused on too is compressing our cycle of time from idea all the way to contract implementation, not months and years, but hopefully, days and weeks. And that's kind of a long-term thing, as we know. Another idea we have is what's called Federal Data Check, and it's an e-tool that provides various queries of the procurement data in FPDS, the Federal Procurement Data System. That's our authorized federal source that identifies potential areas that we're able to require verification. It goes around the concept of that we have American sources and properly certified sources around FedRAMP and other kind of ideas as well. So these are some of the things that we're looking innovatively. Another couple components that we can continue to address or talk about are things like digital twinning, not just products, but also facilities. As you know, our supply chain modernization effort is going out. We're into phase 2 of that solicitation right now. And that's kind of a proof of concept on how we can do things right with technologies of service, statement of objectives as opposed to requirements. And with that, the winning industry partner is going to have a whole lot of new innovative things that are cloud-based. And so that's something that's going to help us streamline our processes, as well as sunset some of our legacy systems that we have. As those who've been working in VA know, that there's a significant amount, hundreds of unique items and systems. And that's really in that game changer of, the new VA, not our parents' VA, is transparent and joint, and we make sure things are integrated across the enterprise.
That's fantastic, Mike. A very exciting time to be at the VA as you're using all these different technologies. Let me ask you a question that's connected to that. If industry often says, we've got this innovative solution that we'd love to get in front of the VA, and it's really hard to be able to do that and let them know how it can help them save time, save money, drive, be mission focused, all those things that need to happen. What is your recommendation to industry if they do have an innovative solution to get in front of the right people?
Yeah, and Pathfinder is that first step, because it's a way to actually get identified those new ideas to the right people and to the right teams. We've seen out of a couple hundred of the innovative ideas that we're already doing some of that work, so they're not necessarily needed. But we found a couple, I would say a couple dozen actually good ideas that are being processed and vetted, and we can do better on our communications things. But as you know, one of my big mantras since I've been here is it's okay to communicate, introduction wise and informational wise. And so Pathfinder is that vehicle to do that. Otherwise, it's important for people to be able to reach out to me and have those conversations and to look at ways to say, hey, we didn't think about that. Let's do this. We've also got cooperative research and development ideas and agreements. We're trying to set up SBIRS, TTR-like kind of programs through the VHA and otherwise. And so there's some of this stuff has to be legislative and statutorily authorized, but we do have authorities for CRADAs in VHA. And so those are other ways to help test and validate. Part of the other IVV process is operational test and evaluation that we're also looking longer term to put in place so we can test new ideas and have a centralized evaluation center that we can plug in new ideas into and see quantitatively as well as qualitatively, does this system work with us, or is it a good idea that our users then will be able to evaluate? So that's something long term, but I appreciate that question, and I hope that people have seen a exponential change in the last 3 or 4 years of that relationship between vendor and VA partners to be able to talk and communicate and share ideas together with data.
That's excellent, Mike. Thank you for your leadership in that space. Well, you talked about budget. You talked about all of the modernization things that you have going on there. Can you share some opportunities that will be released in FY24 that industry should have on their radar screen?
Yeah, I mentioned infrastructure, a year of infrastructure. So you'll see a lot of those probably across the enterprise. Some of these are fairly large. Obviously, we work with Corps of Engineers, but the others will be smaller. And obviously, we're looking for those innovative ideas and be able to do some of those areas. I think a real big push that industry needs to be aware of, it's really a real big push government-wide around procurement equity and Made in America. And I think one of the big concerns that we have is obviously, as we know, our supply chain in America, it's not just a VA problem, it's a national problem about having Made in America products. I think that the more we can be made aware of FDA approved and certified American made products and components, that's a huge win for us, because right now that's a big gap. And so we're still relegated to being required to have to purchase some items and pharmaceuticals and others from overseas, some PPE, personal protective equipment, et cetera. And so that is a big push for us this coming year. So anyone that's listening that might have personal protective equipment that's made in America that can verify that and also be FDA approved, then by all means reach out to us, because we would look at that very quickly. So and that's why I mentioned improving the industrial base, because that's not just a VA item; it's a U.S. overall item. I think you'll see, our new medical surgical prime vendor contract was rolled out this past year. So, we have some prime vendors that work with us to be able to source medical supplies. You'll see a lot of that, and you'll see more and more as we're getting into the cloud and doing more artificial intelligence type of systems. You'll see more and more IT related things. But what we ultimately want is partners that are going to help us kind of on this journey, not just be the ones that are spending money for money's sake or just treating it necessarily just solely as a business. I understand the business component coming from that side, but we want to be able to have partners that can help us move the government needle from procurement, while also obviously serving our veterans, because our main mission is always, whatever we do, improving access and outcomes for our veterans. And that's kind of what drives everything that we do.
So, Mike, there's going to be an opportunity for industry to connect in Orlando in November. Can you tell me more about the event, the program, who we should expect that will be there, and the engagement?
Our National Veterans Small Business Engagement, which has been on hiatus because of COVID. This is the first time we're rolling this out in a few years. It's going to be in Orlando the first week of November, I believe, and I encourage everyone to go and sign up for it. We will have a lot of our contracting leaders and a lot of our category leaders there to be able to host different events and different meetings. I'll be there myself personally, and I look forward to having roundtables and other venues to talk and meet with the industry partners. So that's something that I think it's small business focused, but I think anyone can come and attend, and I encourage you to do so.
Mike, is there anything that I haven't asked you today that you'd like to share?
No, I think we've covered a lot of the top line bases and stuff. I just radar to industry is we're a work in progress. I hope they've seen some benefits working with VA, and we always look for you as industry partners help to make ourselves better and make ultimately the VA better, which ultimately gets to better access and outcomes for our veterans. And I thank you all for your help with us in that journey.
Thank you so much, Mike. This session was just so fantastic. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you for your time.
That concludes today's episode of the Fed to Fed podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback helps us to continue to bring you thought-provoking conversations with the brightest minds in government technology. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll continue to explore opportunities to harness the power of technology for a more innovative and efficient government. Until then, I'm Susan Scher, and this is the Fed to Fed podcast. Thank you for joining us.